Welcome to the Web Application Pentesting course at Pentester Academy. Now in this video, we will look at remote file inclusion vulnerability basics. So what is the remote file inclusion vulnerability? Now very simply put, if user editable input, and the reason I use this phrase is, let's say parameters in the URL, or maybe something in the post or any other area such as cookies which the user can edit, is somehow used to include other files in the execution flow of the current PHP script, and if that user editable input is not checked and sanitized, then in some cases it might lead to arbitrary files being included by a malicious user. Now, in PHP, the ways by which you can include remote files are using functions such as include, include once, require, and require once. Now, let me show you how a typical vulnerable file includes looks like. So we actually get an input from the user for file, and then we are including that file without sanitizing or checking this value in any way. Now keep in mind that for RFI to work, or rather for include, require, include once, require once to work, a specific PHP configuration needs to be turned on, and that is allow URL include, right? So on default installations this may be turned off, and later on we'll look at why LFI is probably a more probable case than RFI. But let's go ahead to the etc directory, and I'm using Kali Linux as my base. If you're using Ubuntu or any other Linux distribution, please figure out the appropriate directory. Apache 2, PHP ini, and then allow URL include. Here it is, and by default it's turned off. Let's turn it on, right? Or rather, okay, let's turn it on first and I'll show you how it looks like if we turn it off. Let me just restart Apache. Now let's actually go in here. So this is my RFI directory, and you should go ahead and unzip all of these files, and the zip file is available below the video into the var www directory. This creates an RFI directory with the following files in them, and all we do is rfi.php can import home or contact. So let's say rfi.php and then file equals home.php, right? And if you run it, let's say without any parameters, this basically just says file included. But now when we include home, it says home.php, and we can also include, let's say, contact, and this includes contact, right? Very common functionality on the web, right? You may have page equals instead of file equals, but RFI is, or rather using such inputs is quite common. Now let's look at how to exploit this condition, right? Now require once, or include once, the best part is that you can go ahead and include files, of course, on the local machines, and not just that but also on remote servers. So let me actually create a directory called RFI, and let me quickly look at my local IP address 192.168.2.22, and let me go inside the RFI directory and copy our simple backdoor in there. There we go. And now let's run our favorite little Python HTTP server, and let's have it listen on port 8000. Now instead of contact.php, you can pretty much go in here and say HTTP 192.168.2.22 and port number is 8000, simple backdoor.php. And if you notice, simple backdoor.php executes, gives us the usage. So let's copy this out, paste it here, and let's replace the question mark with an ampersand as it's an additional parameter. And there you go. Right? Now you can pretty much get a shell on the box. And if you notice, every single time the file is actually retrieved from the remote server, right? Unlike in the file upload case where if you upload once you're done, in this case every single time the file is fetched from the remote server. Now of course, having RFI pretty much also means you can access most of the local files as well, whatever permissions you may have, right? And we'll come to LFI a little later, but RFI also allows you to do this, right? Fantastic. Now let's actually see what happens if we go ahead and turn off this config on PHP INI, right? So let's go back in here. It's basically allow URL include, and let's go ahead and turn it off. Let's restart Apache, and I'm also going to monitor the error logs in Apache. There we go. And now let me actually go ahead and try this out. If you notice, nothing happened, and if I go to the error log, you'll actually see, right, this gives you an error which basically tells you that this did not succeed, right? So RFI ends up failing. However, we can still go ahead and tamper and play with the local files, right? Simply because this does not require opening or fetching anything remotely, right? Awesome. So I hope RFI is clear to you and you understand why this config is super important. In the next video, we'll look at other variations of RFI. Now, if you're enjoying this video and others at Pentester Academy, then we would really appreciate if you can recommend us to friends and colleagues in your InfoSec community. Thank you.